welcome. If you were around when the first PlayStation launched, you'll remember just what a tremendous jump it was from the previous 16-bit generation. Now, I'm not throwing any shade on the 16-bit gen, don't get me wrong. There's some great games that are still very much enjoyable to play today. And it did do 3D in its own way, but this was a jaw-dropping jump from what we previously had. Not because it went from 16-bit to 32 bits, but because nearly all the games were 3D. And it was a type of 3D we'd never really experienced. Okay, it was a bit polygony and in places certainly a little bit pointy, but we'd never seen anything like it. It was just such a fantastic time to be a gamer, and this console summed up my childhood in many ways. It's probably why I'm so nostalgic for it. So I've compiled a list of games I personally consider to be iconic, but that won't break the bank. You can get them for £10 or less. Yes, that will mean you might have to get a copy without a manual, or the dreaded platinum copy, which never bothered me, but each to their own. But either way, you'll get a copy of these games for £10 or less, and they're truly what I consider to be icons of the time. I've also included two bonuses at the end, which are a tad more expensive than £10, but I feel are absolutely 100% necessary in anyone's PS1 collection.
Take your pick with this first entry. Any one of the 5 original Tomb Raider games on the PlayStation 1. The cheapest is about a £5, the dearest is around a tenner. And they're all absolutely fantastic. As are these old late 90s adverts, by the way. How cool is this? I miss this type of advert. You'll see a few of them as we go through, but I digress. Lara Croft was everywhere in the late 90s and early 2000s. Although obviously not a PlayStation exclusive franchise, and it's still not now, it's multi-platform, it felt like a PlayStation 1 because PlayStation being so popular, I suppose that was where everybody seemed to see it. And you had people dressing up like her, cosplaying, there were 3D statues in the game stores, the girls loved seeing a fellow female kicking butt, and some teenage boys did lust after her. Lara was arguably one of the most popular characters from the PlayStation 1 generation, and with very good reason. Now, if you've seen my other videos, you'll know just how much I love Tomb Raider as a franchise, except Angel of Darkness. But in general, I'm a big fan of it, and also it really showed off the new power of the new generation of consoles. I still say Tomb Raider is one of the best representations of what the PlayStation 1 could do. The open environments, the way you interacted with the environments, and just the general look of it. Everybody had a Tomb Raider game, everybody loved it, and you know what? I still do. Just wish they'd make another film starring Angelina Jolie. I still think they're good films. Next is Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back. You could also get Crash 3 if you really wanted to. I just prefer 2, so that's the one that's going on the list. 3D platformers were incredibly popular, for very good reason. They're really good fun, and Crash Bandicoot really sums them up well to me. I loved this series growing up. I definitely completed the first 2, I don't know if I completed the third or not. Might be something to do this year maybe. But there's just great variety in the gameplay, especially compared to what we were used to with the previous generation. They look really good for the time. Yes, the difficulty spikes are a bit annoying, but it's synonymous with this type of game. And I do believe PlayStation did try to use Crash as a bit of a mascot. I think they were maybe hoping that Crash Bandicoot could become PlayStation's Mario. Maybe not quite as popular as Mario, but still, absolutely brilliant. I still like these games today. The Crash Bandicoot franchise is still going. So the longevity shows just what they had here and just how good it was. It really sums up 3D platforming greatness, in my own personal opinion, and it is an absolute must for any PS1 collector. And, like the rest of the games on this list, it won't break the bank to pick them up either. Just try not to throw your controller in frustration when you repeatedly die on the same bit. It's all part of the experience.
Gran Turismo, the original or the second one.
I prefer the second, let me know your favourite. As soon as I wanted to put a racing game on this list, I instantly went to Gran Turismo and was delighted to see that you can get either of the ones on the original PlayStation for £10 or less, which is a result because these were some of the best driving games ever made. Like some of the other games on this list, it's part of a franchise which is still going, and that proves just how good it is. Marketed as the real driving simulator, it really did its best to deliver on that promise. You have to remember the hardware available at the time, and it pushed it as hard as it possibly could to give us that real experience. Every car seemed to handle differently, so you could actually feel the difference. As you went through the different stages, as you did the different types of races, it all felt different, whereas with arcade racers, which we'd had mostly of up until this point, it all just felt very much the same. Still good fun, but very much the same, just perhaps the car had a different top speed. Graphically, very, very impressive for the time. It still impresses me now how, on the 5th generation, they managed to so accurately portray the real-life tracks, not to mention the cars as well. Whether you're into cars or not, you will recognise the vehicles in this game. I don't know if they had to go and get licenses or whatever, but however they did it, they managed to get so many real-world cars in here. It absolutely made the game something truly special. If you want to go racing on the original PlayStation, there's no series more iconic than Gran Turismo. Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. I remember buying this back in the day, because back then in the stores you actually had games that you could play on kiosks, or at least they'd have the demo showing on it if nothing else, and I was blown away by how it looked. It's got a claymation style effect, which reminded me of Wallace and Gromit, which was quite popular at the time in itself. Wallace and Gromit: The Wrong Trousers, still the best one. But back to the game. It just looked so unique. Little did I know I was in for one of the most frustrating games ever made. Or I was just really bad at it. Honestly, I mentioned earlier about Crash Bandicoot being a little bit frustrating because you die and die at the same place all the time. That's got nothing on Abe's Odyssey, that's a weekend at the beach. The puzzles are, to its credit, absolutely ingenious, as is the world and the writing with this game. Long story short, you are part of a species, and I'm going to get this wrong I know, but I think you're called Mudokons. You've got a rich history, you're happy on your planet, but many, many years ago, other species came down, stripped your planet of its natural resources, and enslaved the entire lot of you. Not very nice. Over time, you've become a very meek species and just accepted your fate, until Abe decides, hang on a second, this sucks. And he decides to free his fellows, as well as fight back against the industrial machine which has taken over his planet. And it's handy that he's got a few abilities native to his species, which I'm guessing the rest of them forgot they had or just never thought to use. It is a really, really dark concept, but they kept an enormous amount of humour in there. Like, farting is literally part of solving a puzzle. It's a very, very clever puzzle platformer. It's very unique. I can't think of any other game exactly like it, and still to this day, a lesson in world building. It's fantastic. There's been quite a few sequels since, and I would encourage you to give this a go, but it requires patience. Siphon Filter 2. One of Sony's forgotten franchise, which I would desperately love to bring back. It's a fantastic spy thriller, very much in the vein of James Bond. As you can tell from the fact it's Siphon Filter 2, there was one before it. There's also a third one on the PlayStation 1. They go for about £12 to £15, unless you get lucky on eBay or Vinted. But you can definitely get the second one for around £10, and they're all just amazing fun. Proper old school action adventure. There's a bit of platforming, lots of gunplay, a really well written, good in-depth story. Some entries in the franchise are better than others, obviously, but they've all got the same elements and they're all pretty good. I'm a humongous fan of this. It had 3 entries on the original PlayStation. I think it was 2 or 3 on the PlayStation 2, and it even had PSP exclusives. So it is a franchise that was everywhere for a little while, that Sony put a lot into. Then all of a sudden they just decided no more, which is a shame, because as a massive James Bond fan, anything in the same vein, I'm here for. And I still love these games to this day. I actually in some ways prefer the story from the first 3 from the sequels on the PlayStation 2, but there's not a bad entry in the entire series. If you like things like James Bond, or just third-person shooters with a really compelling story, a bit of action-adventure, this is for you. Don't forget Siphon Filter like Sony has. Give it a go. I think you'll fall in love with it like I did. Final Fantasy VII. Now, you do have to go for the Platinum Edition without the manual to get this for a tenner, which is the cheapest version possible, but the fact I can put, arguably, one of the greatest, if not most famous, JRPGs of all time on a £10 or less list, it baffles the mind, and I think it's a really good way to get people into it. I know they've done the remakes. I actually prefer the remakes because I've mentioned in previous videos I'm not a big fan of turn-based combat, but if you want to play it the way it was originally released, the way that many people still prefer with its turn-based combat, you can, on a budget. I don't think I really need to tell you much about the story or that it's a good game, because you will have heard of it before. However, I will also throw this in. If you don't want to go for a without manual Platinum Edition for your collection, you could also go for a complete copy of Final Fantasy VIII. So that's not a bad option. Just because it's not as famous doesn't mean it's not also a good game. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Take your pick. 1, 2, 3 or 4. They're all well within the £10 or less budget. And so many hours were put into this by so many teenagers back in the day. I think they've just done a remaster of, is it 1 and 2 or 2 and 3? Or either way, a remaster's come out and it seems to be fairly popular. And it's brought back a bit of interest in the series. I actually only had this on a demo disc where you got, I think, 1 or 2 levels, but you could just go around and do what you wanted. And I remember playing it for hours and hours, just doing different tricks and exploring. It had obviously an open world feel to it because you could go around the environment doing tricks any way you wanted and just letting your imagination take charge. And yes, you could even build your own skate park. This was hugely iconic. Okay, skateboarding might not be as big as it used to be, but let's be honest. How many of us loved these games, yet never went on a skateboard in our life? I did once, actually. Fell off. Really hurt. Never again. Tenchu Stealth Assassins. How many modern stealth games owe a debt to Tenchu? This was the first real stealth game I ever played apart from Metal Gear Solid, but obviously completely different types of games there. I really enjoyed the levels on this where you could go onto the building's rooftops and jump behind people, or you could set traps with, I think it was meant to be like rice, which would attract people and poison them, but if you got there first, you could just stab them in the back. By the way, quite gory this game for the time. It might look tame now because of the graphics, but at the time, look at the blood fly. Anyway, I digress. It was a stealth revelation to me, and I love stealth games to this day. They're one of my favourite types of games of all time, so I owe Tenchu that for giving me my first stealth assassin experience. It set a bar that modern games still aspire to hit, and you can also get Tenchu 2, as long as you get the Platinum version, within the price range as well. On a little side note, if you do want a modern version, try Aragami. That's quite a good game, that. Only came out a few years ago. Gex Deep Cover Gecko. My favourite entry in the series, and fortunately, the cheapest. One of them's actually really expensive. But this is the one that I own still. It's the one I remember having so much fun with. As you can tell from the title, they decided to parody James Bond and other things that were in the social climate of the day. Obviously, being of a certain age, it all still makes sense to me. I was born in the late 80s, and obviously this is my childhood summed up. It's why I'm making this video and so passionate about the games. If you were born in the mid to late 2000s, some of the jokes and references might be lost on you, but I just put that down to you not being cultured enough and you need to learn more. But hey, that's just my opinion. You join Gex on a mission. He takes on various guises for each different level, and it's all about exploration, platforming, collecting, with some light combat. The majority of things can be whipped away with a tail slap. It's not the most difficult game in the world, but it is just good fun, exploring the levels, seeing the little Easter eggs that are around. It isn't just the collectathon, although that is obviously part of the game. It's a very good spoof, I suppose would be the best way, of what was popular at the time. And I just really remember enjoying the story. Probably one of the more chilled out and relaxing games to play on this list. It was multi-platform, but a bit like I said with Lara Croft earlier, Gex felt a bit like a Sony mascot. I associate him with Sony still to this day, but that might just be because I experienced him on Sony consoles. Definitely one of the iconic 3D platformers out there. Yes, there are a lot of the time. Yes, there still are a lot now. Gex is still one of the best to me. Tekken 2. Now you might be thinking, but surely Tekken 3 is the more iconic fighting game for the PlayStation 1. And truthfully, you're right, but you can't get it for less than a tenner, at least not when I looked on eBay, CEX and the usual places. And I wouldn't want to promise something that isn't achievable. That said, Tekken 2 still more than has its moments. This seminal fighting series seemed to peak on the original PlayStation. I remember playing it a lot more than I did Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, despite the fact I had Mortal Kombat on the Sega Mega Drive. One-on-one fighters were built for couch co-op, and this was the game that all my mates were playing, well the series anyway, so it's the one I played too. And I've got some very, very fond memories of playing Tekken. I did play Tekken 2 and then 3 when it came out. Yes, there are other great beat-em-up series which were also out at the time. I've already mentioned Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter was another one, but for me, Tekken summed up the PlayStation 1 with its one-on-one fighters, and that's why I consider it iconic for the PS1. And as promised, here are two bonuses which do not fit in with the price range, but are just so iconic to me. For the PS1, I wanted to talk about them just a little. The first one, of course, as you've already seen, is Command & Conquer Red Alert, although the original Command & Conquer could easily go here as well. These were real-time strategy games which, for the first time really, gave us PC quality gameplay on a console, or at least very close to it. Real-time strategy games are still to this day thought of as more PC games than they are console games. They're definitely more available on PC. And I spent so many hours on Command & Conquer. My favourite part was always the missions where you could build a base. I would spend literal hours trying to make my base absolutely perfect, impenetrable to the enemy, and building up a mighty force which was usually 3 or 4 times larger than it needed to be to go out there and take out the baddies, mining every bit of Tiberium possible. We wouldn't see a Command & Conquer entry onto a PlayStation home console until the PlayStation 3 after Red Alert. Again, multi-platform, but to me, definitely a PlayStation 1 iconic game. Prices for a copy seem to start around the £15 mark. And my second bonus is Doom. Now, I know that nowadays Doom can run on practically anything, mobile phone, emulator, calculator probably, but at the time, of course, you needed a console or a PC to play it. And it is up there with Quake and Duke Nukem, maybe Wolfenstein, as one of the games that truly gave birth to the FPS game. They set the formula and it was followed because they did it so very, very well. I loved Doom. Doom 2 is my absolute favourite because that's the one I've got the most nostalgia for. And you just can't beat it. At the time, it had some horror elements which were a little bit scary to a younger lad. Not me, obviously, I was big and brave, but I'm sure that at least one or two of you out there might have jumped a few times when you went round a corner just to be faced by 6 demons breathing fire at you. And it did have that dark atmosphere which just worked ever so well. especially if you were playing it with the lights off and the sound right down, so you didn't get caught playing video games past your bedtime. I've got a lot of love for Doom. I don't think any PlayStation 1 collection is complete without it. You're looking between £15 and £25 depending which game you go for. I know, again, it's a multi-platform one, but I played it so much on the PS1, it's just always going to be part of its history to me. And a true icon, if not of the PlayStation, definitely of the time.
So tell me, please, what do you think? Obviously, I've tried to keep this price-centric because, especially with the price games seem to be going up and up to, have you seen how much they want for Mario Kart on the Switch 2? I think it's nice to find retro games which are friendly to your wallet. What iconic games would you consider must be included in any collection for a PS1? Let me know in the comments. I'd genuinely love to hear from you. I will do my best to reply, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Ta-da for now.